99.999%.
That can't be right.
It is. You are the father on the record.
The judge didn't make a speech. He didn't need to. In courtroom 6A, the air was already tight, packed with whispers, old resentments, and the kind of fear that makes people sit too still. Darius King stood at the petitioner's table in a dark suit that didn't fit quite right in the shoulders, as if it belonged to a version of him that still believed this would end cleanly. His hands were folded, but his fingers kept flexing and relaxing like he was trying to shake off a tremor no one could see. Across the aisle, Naomi King sat with her attorney, chin lifted, eyes red from crying she'd tried to hide. She kept glancing toward the side door where their daughter waited with a court advocate, 7-year-old Ava, legs swinging on a plastic chair, confused about why adults were fighting over her name. Darius cleared his throat. "She's not my daughter," he said again, louder this time, because he thought volume could substitute for certainty. "I'm not paying for a biomum lie." The words landed hard. A few people in the gallery shifted, someone's bracelet clinked, a bailiff's radio hissed softly, and then went quiet. Judge Anthony Delacourt didn't react right away. He looked down at the folder in front of him, the petition to disestablish paternity, the request to terminate support, the photographs, the school records, the texts, the previous private test result Darius had submitted as Exhibit A. Then Judge Delacourt lifted his eyes. "Mr. King," he said evenly, "you understand the seriousness of what you're asking." Darius's jaw tightened. "Yes, Your Honor." "You're asking this court to legally sever a father-child relationship," the judge continued. "You're asking to remove your name from a birth certificate. You're asking to end your financial obligations. And you have said, under oath, that you are certain." Darius didn't blink. "I am," he said. "I've got proof." Naomi's attorney started to speak. Judge Delacourt raised a hand without looking up. "Before anyone argues further," he said, "the court-ordered DNA report is in." The room went silent like someone turned a dial. The clerk stood and walked the envelope to the bench. Judge Delacourt opened it slowly, the paper whispering against itself. He scanned the first page, then the second. For a beat, his expression didn't change. Then his eyes narrowed slightly, not with confusion, something closer to disbelief. Darius felt his chest tighten. Naomi's breathing stopped. Judge Delacourt cleared his throat. "The probability of paternity," he read, voice calm and flat, "is 99.999%. A ripple moved through the courtroom. Not loud, real. Darius's face drained of color. He blinked once, twice, like the words were a language he couldn't translate. Naomi made a sound, half sob, half gasp, and covered her mouth with her hand. Judge Delacourt kept reading, steady. "The combined paternity index exceeds—" He paused, then looked up. "Mr. King, you are the biological father." For a second, Darius didn't move. Then his knees softened. His hands reached for the table edge like it was the only thing keeping him upright. His mouth opened. No sound came out. The world inside his head, 8 months of suspicion, anger, certainty, collapsed into one impossible fact. He wasn't just wrong. He'd been wrong while looking his daughter in the eye. Judge Delacourt set the report down. "Mr. King," he said, voice firm now, "do you have anything to say?" Darius tried to speak. His throat tightened, and then the tears came. Not the neat kind. The kind that makes a man fold forward as if his ribs can't hold his heart. He covered his face with both hands. He shook his head like he was trying to deny the paper, the ink, the science. But he couldn't. And in a quiet courtroom where everyone had been ready for one outcome, the other outcome landed like a storm. Darius whispered into his hands, voice breaking. I I said she wasn't mine. His shoulders shook harder. Naomi stared at him, rage and grief twisting together. Judge Delacourt's voice cut through it. This court will not entertain further argument on paternity, he said. It is established. He leaned forward, eyes hard. And Mr. King, he added, your daughter is 7 years old. She heard you deny her today. You will understand, going forward, that your words will be treated as actions in this court. The judge's gaze shifted to Naomi. Ms. King, he said, you are not excused from communication failures either, but the legal father-child relationship stands, and we will now address custody and support with the child's best interests in mind. Darius remained bent over the table, trembling, because the DNA result had done more than prove paternity. It had exposed something else. How easy it is to let fear convince you that love is a trap, and how expensive it is when you're wrong. If you're wondering what makes a man say, "She's not my daughter," out loud, what builds that kind of certainty, and what happens when science demolishes it in one sentence, you have to rewind, back to the beginning, back to the moment doubt entered the house and never left. Darius and Naomi didn't start as a cautionary tale. They started as one of those couples people described as solid. They met in their mid-20s at a friend's birthday party, music too loud, people too close, summer air thick with sweat and laughter. Darius was the guy who stayed near the edges at first, observant, steady, not trying to impress anyone. Naomi was the opposite, bright, quick, the kind of woman who could walk into a room and make it feel warmer. They talked for an hour in the kitchen, leaning against the counter, the conversation drifting from work to family to the strange fear of becoming adults who repeat their parents' mistakes. Darius told her he wanted peace. Naomi smiled and said, "Then you need someone who doesn't treat love like a competition." Darius laughed. "Is that an application?" Naomi raised an eyebrow. "Depends," she said. "You got references?" They fell into a relationship that felt like relief. They got married after 3 years, a small wedding, backyard lights strung through trees, Darius's mother crying in the front row, Naomi's father squeezing Darius's hand like he was passing something precious across generations. When Naomi got pregnant, Darius acted like he wasn't nervous, but he built the crib twice because he didn't trust his own hands. Ava was born on a windy night in March. She came out loud and furious, and Darius cried when the nurse placed her in his arms. He whispered, "Hey, baby." Ava blinked at him like she recognized his voice already. For years, Darius was Dakar Kongs, the kind of father you don't see online because he wasn't performing it. He was living it. He packed lunches. He learned how to do hair badly and kept trying anyway. He showed up to school events in work boots and a clean shirt, clapping too loud, proud in a way that didn't need words. Naomi loved watching Darius with Ava. It made her feel safe. It made her believe they'd done it. They'd built something better than what they'd grown up with. Then the stress hit them like it hits everyone. Not a single disaster. A slow grind. The first fracture was money. Darius worked as a union electrician, good income, but inconsistent hours when projects changed. Naomi managed a busy salon, steady work, but emotionally draining, always taking care of other people. They both felt exhausted. They both wanted appreciation. They both thought the other person wasn't noticing how hard they were trying. They started arguing about small things that weren't small. Why Naomi stayed late. Why Darius wasn't home for dinner again. Why Ava was always on a tablet. Why nobody ever listened. Then came the night Naomi made a mistake that would later become the spark for everything. It wasn't a long affair. It wasn't a secret life. It was one weekend at a work training event when Naomi drank too much, felt lonely, and crossed a line with a man she should have stayed far away from. Her co-worker's cousin, a man named Lucas. It happened once. Naomi hated herself immediately. She cut off contact. She told herself she would never say it out loud because saying it out loud would destroy her family. She told herself it didn't matter because it happened years after Ava was born. A betrayal, yes, but not a paternity betrayal. Naomi didn't understand how easily one secret can poison everything else, because secrets never stay in the box you built for them. They leak, and they change the air. Darius sensed the leak before he knew what it was, not in a dramatic way, in 1,000 small ways. Naomi started guarding her phone more tightly. She started getting defensive over harmless questions. She started saying, "You don't trust me," before Darius even accused her of anything. Darius kept telling himself he was overthinking. He didn't want to be that man, paranoid, controlling, angry. But then Darius's cousin Jalen showed him a screenshot one night at a family barbecue, a comment thread on social media. A woman with Naomi's name liked a photo of Lucas at a rooftop bar. Jalen shrugged. "Probably nothing," he said, but the seed was planted. Darius didn't confront Naomi at first. He watched, and watching turned into obsession. Because once your brain starts scanning for betrayal, it finds patterns everywhere. A missed call, a delayed text, a laugh that doesn't sound as warm. One night, Darius asked Naomi directly. "Are you talking to someone?" he said. Naomi froze for half a second, too small for most people to notice, too big for Darius to miss. Then she laughed. "What?" she said. "No." Darius stared at her. Naomi smiled too brightly. "You're tired," she said. "Stop creating problems." Darius's chest tightened. "I'm not creating anything," he said. "I'm asking." Naomi snapped. "I'm not doing this." She walked away, and the conversation ended the way so many marriages end conversations. Unfinished, unresolved, simmering. A few weeks later, Darius found the truth about Lucas, not through his instincts, through Naomi's own negligence. She left her phone on the couch while she went to shower. A message popped up. "Last night was insane. Miss you." Darius stared at the screen like he'd been punched. His heart raced, his ears rang. He didn't pick up the phone, he didn't scroll, he didn't need to. That one line was enough. When Naomi came out of the bathroom, towel wrapped around her hair, Darius stood with his arms crossed, face pale. "Who's Lucas?" he asked. Naomi's face drained instantly. She tried to lie, then realized she couldn't. It all collapsed. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "It was a mistake." Darius's voice went tight. "How long?" "One time," Naomi pleaded. "It was one time." Darius laughed once, sharp, without joy. "One time," he repeated. "And you hid it," Naomi cried. "I was scared," she said. Darius's jaw clenched. "I don't care why," he said. "I care that you did it." The marriage didn't break in that moment, it fractured, and a fracture changes everything about how you interpret the past. After the confession, Darius did what many people do when their world collapses. He started rewriting history. Every time Naomi had been late, every time she had been distracted, every time Ava looked more like Naomi than him, every family member's comment about Ava's light eyes or different hair texture became a point on a map Darius didn't want to follow but couldn't stop tracing. Naomi kept saying, "Ava is yours." Darius didn't believe her, not because of logic, but because pain makes people want the betrayal to be total. Total betrayal feels easier to justify. If Naomi lied about everything, then Darius didn't have to wrestle with complicated truth. He could just leave. He could just cut. He could just stop hurting. Darius asked Naomi when the affair started. Naomi told the truth. Years after Ava's birth. Darius didn't trust it. He started calculating. Ava's birthday, their fights, Darius's work trips, Naomi's late shifts. Darius began to wonder if there had been someone else earlier. Naomi denied it. Darius kept digging, and then he did the worst thing a hurt person can do. He looked at his daughter and saw doubt instead of love. Ava noticed. Kids always notice. She didn't have the words for it, but she felt the temperature change. She started asking Naomi, "Why is Daddy mad?" Naomi tried to cover it. "Daddy's stressed," she'd say. "He loves you." But Ava's eyes followed Darius around the house, like she was afraid he might leave without saying goodbye. Darius tried to be normal with her. He tried to read bedtime stories. He tried to smile, but every time Ava hugged him, part of his brain whispered, "What if she's not yours?" That whisper grew louder each day, until Darius couldn't stand the uncertainty anymore. So he did what he thought would settle it. He ordered a DNA test, not through court, not through a reputable clinic, a cheap kit online with a promise of fast results and a bright marketing smile. Darius didn't tell Naomi. He did it in secret because he didn't want anyone to talk him out of it. He swabbed his own cheek late at night, hands shaking. He swabbed Ava's cheek while she slept on the couch during a movie, gently, trying not to wake her, guilt already rising in his throat. He mailed the samples the next morning before work. Then he waited like a man waiting for a verdict. When the email arrived, Darius opened it on his lunch break in his truck, phone screen glowing in the dark cabin, the result displayed in a clean font. Not related. Darius stared at it. His chest went cold. He read it again. Not related. The words felt like permission. Permission to stop fighting, permission to stop loving, permission to hate Naomi fully. Darius didn't question the test. He didn't think about error. He didn't think about chain of custody. He didn't think about the lab's credibility. He wanted the pain to have a shape. Now it did. He drove home with the result like a weapon in his pocket. That night, Darius confronted Naomi in the kitchen. Ava was upstairs coloring. The house smelled like dinner, like normal life trying to exist. Darius threw his phone on the table. Naomi picked it up. Her face changed as she read the result. Then she looked up, eyes wide. "That's not real," she whispered. Darius's voice rose. "It's real enough." Naomi shook her head, frantic. "Darius, no. Ava is yours. That test—" Darius cut her off, rage sharp and hot. "Stop," he snapped. "Stop lying to me." Naomi's eyes filled. "I'm not lying about her," she pleaded. Darius felt his throat tighten with something that wasn't just anger, fear. If Ava wasn't his, then his entire identity as a father had been built on Naomi's deception. Darius couldn't bear that, so he pushed harder. "You made me raise another man's child," he said, voice shaking. "You let me—" Naomi flinched like he'd hit her with the sentence. "Darius," she whispered. "She's 7. Darius's jaw clenched. "Then tell her the truth," he said. Naomi's face went pale. "No," she said. "I will not destroy her because you're spiraling." "Spiraling," Darius repeated bitterly. "I have proof." Naomi stared at the phone again, then back at Darius. Her voice was small. "This is wrong," she said. "This is wrong." But Darius was already gone emotionally. Once he believed Ava wasn't his, he started behaving like she wasn't. He stopped doing bedtime. He stopped packing lunches. He stopped calling her baby girl. Ava noticed instantly. She asked him one night, voice trembling, "Daddy, are you mad at me?" Darius looked at her face, her wide eyes, her small hands, and felt his heart crack. But the crack didn't open into tenderness. It opened into distance. He swallowed hard and said, "Go ask your mom." Ava's eyes filled. She walked away quietly, and Naomi stared at Darius like she didn't recognize the man she married. That was the moment the marriage truly ended, not because of paperwork, because of a child's face. Naomi filed for separation within a month. Darius moved out, and with the cheap DNA test in his hand like a shield, he filed a petition to disestablish paternity. He told his attorney, "I'm not paying for a lie." He convinced himself he was protecting himself from being used. But the truth was uglier. Part of him wanted to punish Naomi, and the most painful way to punish someone is to take love away from the person they love most. Ava. Naomi begged Darius to do a court-ordered test. "A real one," she said. "With chain of custody." Darius refused. "Why?" Naomi demanded, tears streaming. "If you're so sure, why are you afraid of a real test?" Darius's jaw tightened. "I'm not afraid," he snapped. "I'm done." But deep down, a small part of him was afraid, not of being right, of being wrong, because if he was wrong, then he had harmed his daughter for nothing, and that guilt was heavier than child support. So he clung to the cheap result like it was life support, until the judge ordered a court test anyway, because family court doesn't care what you believe, it cares what can be proven. The court-appointed test was different, not a kit mailed to a P.O. box, a certified lab, a scheduled appointment, ID verified, photos taken, swabs labeled and sealed in front of witnesses. No ambiguity, no shortcuts. Naomi showed up with her attorney, hands shaking. Darius showed up with his attorney, arms crossed, face hard. Ava didn't attend. The court advocate kept her at school so she wouldn't see her parents treat her like a question mark. Darius told himself he was about to be vindicated. He told himself Naomi would finally be exposed. He told himself the pain would have a clean ending. Then the court report arrived, and the ending wasn't clean, it was catastrophic, because the truth didn't punish Naomi the way Darius expected. It punished Darius's certainty. It punished his cruelty. It punished the story he built to survive his own heartbreak. After the courtroom moment, after Darius broke down in front of everyone, Judge Delacourt called a brief recess, not out of pity, out of necessity. Because family court might be procedural, but judges are not blind to human damage. When court resumed, the judge's tone sharpened. "Mr. King," he said, "your petition to disestablish is denied. Paternity is confirmed." Darius nodded weakly, face wet, eyes down. Judge Delacourt continued. "However, the court is concerned about the emotional harm caused by your repeated verbal denial of this child." Naomi's attorney leaned forward, voice tight. "Your Honor, she's been devastated." Judge Delacourt nodded. "I understand." He looked at Darius again. "Going forward," the judge said, "this court will order reunification therapy between father and child. Supervised visits for 60 days until the cocoisom therapist recommends otherwise. Mr. King will comply with a parenting course focused on attachment and child emotional safety." Darius's attorney objected. Judge Delacourt overruled. "This is not punishment," he said. "This is repair." He looked at Naomi next. "Ms. King," he said, "your adultery confession is not legally relevant to paternity, but it is relevant to co-parenting stability. You will also comply with co-parenting counseling. Both of you will stop using your child as a battleground." Then he said the sentence that hit hardest because it was so simple. "Ava is not a legal argument," Judge Delacourt said. "She is a human being." The gavel struck, and the adults were released back into the world, where consequences are slower and harder than court orders. Darius didn't get to fix it with one apology. He tried. The first time he saw Ava after court, it was in a supervised visitation room that smelled like crayons and old carpet. A counselor sat in the corner with a clipboard. A toy shelf lined the wall, plastic dolls, puzzles, stuffed animals with missing eyes. Ava walked in holding Naomi's hand, eyes wide, face guarded. When she saw Darius, her body stiffened, not because she didn't love him, because love had become unsafe. Darius stood slowly, hands open, voice trembling. "Hey, baby girl," he whispered. Ava flinched at the nickname like it hurt. She didn't run to him like she used to. She walked to the table and sat down, legs swinging, eyes down. Darius sat across from her, heart pounding like a drum. He wanted to say 100 things. He chose the truth. "I was wrong," he said softly. Ava didn't look up. Darius's throat tightened. "I said something I should never have said," he continued. "I said you weren't mine, and that hurt you." Ava's fingers tightened around a pencil. Tears slid down her cheek silently. Darius's eyes burned. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I'm so sorry." Ava's voice came out small and sharp. "Do you still want me?" she asked. The question hit Darius like a fist, because it wasn't about DNA, it was about belonging. Darius's voice broke. "Yes," he said. "Yes, I want you. I always wanted you. I got lost." Ava wiped her face hard. "You didn't come to my recital," she whispered. Darius's chest tightened. "I know," he said. "I messed up." Ava stared at him finally, eyes wide, hurt so old it looked adult. "Mom said you think I'm not real," she whispered. Darius swallowed hard. "You are real," he said. "You're my daughter. I was wrong. The test—" Ava's eyes narrowed. "What test?" she demanded. Darius froze. The therapist had advised them not to talk about DNA details with Ava yet, but the word test had already entered. Darius chose a careful truth. "I thought something that wasn't true," he said, "and a real test showed the truth. And the truth is, you are mine." Ava's mouth trembled. "Then why did you say it?" she asked. Darius stared at his hands. Because there isn't a simple answer that makes cruelty okay. So he told the honest one. "Because I was hurt," he whispered, "and I got scared, and I let fear make me mean." Ava stared at him for a long moment. Then she asked the question that broke him all over again. "Are you going to change your mind again?" she whispered. Darius's throat tightened until it felt like pain. "No," he said firmly, voice shaking. "No, I won't. I promise you." Promises are easy. Trust is not. Ava didn't hug him, not then, but she slid a small stuffed bear across the table toward him, not as affection, as a test. Darius picked it up carefully like it was fragile, and in that small movement, the work of rebuilding began. The twist about the cheap test didn't stay hidden. In later hearings, Judge Delacourt asked Darius's attorney to explain why the private test had shown not related when the court test showed 99.999%. The answer was humiliating. The lab Darius used was not accredited for legal paternity testing. The chain of custody was non-existent. The sample labeling had been done by Darius alone. The report even contained a disclaimer buried in small print. Not for legal use. Darius had treated a marketing product like scientific verdict. He had treated a shortcut like certainty, and that shortcut had almost cost his daughter her father. When Darius learned this, he didn't just feel embarrassed, he felt sick, because the cheap test wasn't just wrong, it was a mirror of his desperation. He wanted the easiest answer. He wanted the fastest relief. He wanted pain to become someone else's fault, and when you want that badly enough, you stop checking whether your proof is real. Over the next months, Darius did the work he should have done, before he ever spoke the words, "not my daughter." He went to therapy. He learned how betrayal trauma can turn into obsession. He learned how anger can disguise fear. He learned how easy it is to treat a child like evidence instead of a person. He also confronted the deeper truth he didn't want to admit. His suspicion wasn't purely about Naomi. It was also about himself. Darius had grown up with a father who drifted in and out, a man who loved in words and disappeared in actions. When Darius became a dad, he promised himself he'd be different. So the idea that he might have been tricked into fatherhood felt like an attack on his identity. And when identity feels threatened, some people protect it with cruelty. Darius had done that. He hated himself for it. But hate doesn't repair anything. Consistency does. So he showed up. Every supervised visit, every therapy session, every parenting course, every school event Naomi allowed through the new court schedule. He sat in the back row at Ava's spring concert and cried quietly when she sang, because he realized how close he came to missing her childhood. Naomi didn't forgive him quickly. She didn't owe him quick forgiveness. But she did something harder. She allowed a path for repair because Ava needed it. And Ava, slowly, started testing Darius in small ways. A little hug that disappeared fast. A bedtime call where she asked, "Are you working tomorrow?" A drawing left in his bag. A question whispered at the end of a visit. "Do you love me now?" Darius answered every time, steady. "Yes," he'd say, "always." A year later, in a follow-up hearing, Judge Delacourt reviewed progress reports. Supervision had ended. Darius had consistent, unsupervised time. Ava's therapist noted improvement in Ava's anxiety and trust. The judge looked at Darius over his glasses. "Mr. King," he said, "you did damage." Darius nodded, throat tight. "Yes, Your Honor." Judge Delacourt continued, "But you also did the work. Do not forget that work is not a punishment. It's your responsibility." Darius nodded again. Naomi stood beside her attorney, eyes tired. The judge looked at her too. "Ms. King," he said, "co-parenting after betrayal requires discipline, not romantic discipline, legal discipline, emotional discipline. You both owe your daughter calm." Naomi nodded. Then the judge said something that landed differently now, after all the chaos. "This child will not be raised in the shadow of adult mistakes," he said. "Not if this court has anything to say about it." The gavel struck, and for the first time, the end of the hearing didn't feel like war. It felt like structure. One night, not long after, Darius tucked Ava into bed at his apartment, the room still decorated with newness because he'd rebuilt his life from scratch. Ava lay under a blanket covered in stars. Darius sat on the edge of the bed, voice soft. "I want to tell you something," he said. Ava's eyes were half closed. "Okay." Darius swallowed hard. "When I said those things," he whispered, "it wasn't because you weren't lovable. It was because I was scared. And I'm sorry I made my fear your problem." Ava blinked slowly. "Are you still scared?" she asked. Darius's throat tightened. "Sometimes," he admitted. "But I'm learning." Ava stared at him with the seriousness kids have when they're deciding whether to trust. Then she said, "I was scared too." Darius's chest cracked open. "I know," he whispered. Ava hesitated, then reached for his hand. Her fingers were small and warm. "I want you to come to my field day," she said. Darius felt tears rise. "I'll be there," he promised. Ava nodded once, satisfied. Then she whispered, almost sleepy, "Don't say it again." Darius's voice broke. "I won't," he whispered. "Never again." Ava closed her eyes. Darius sat there for another minute, holding her hand gently, feeling the weight of what words can do. Because the DNA result stunned everyone. But the real shock wasn't biology. It was the realization that a father can almost lose his daughter without anyone physically taking her away, just by speaking doubt into her identity. If you're listening to this and thinking, "He got what he deserved," or "How could he do that?" pause on the part that matters most. Ava didn't deserve any of it. Not the accusation, not the coldness, not being treated like a question mark. Adults often forget that children absorb every adult sentence like it's scripture. When a father says, "You're not mine," a child doesn't hear legal nuance. They hear rejection, and rejection doesn't disappear because a judge reads a number. It heals slowly, through repetition, through consistency, through love that shows up even when shame wants to hide. So here's a question worth sitting with, quietly. If you ever had doubt about something this big, Would you handle it like a legal battle, or like a child's heart was on the line? Because the way you handle it becomes the child's memory forever. Darius learned that the hard way. He walked into court thinking the DNA would free him. Instead, it trapped him in the truth, and that truth forced him to become the kind of father he thought he already was. Not just a provider, not just a name on paper. A man who can admit he was wrong, own the harm, and rebuild trust, one ordinary day at a time. That's the ending this story earns. Not a perfect family, not a clean victory. A father, finally on his knees, not in defeat, but in accountability, choosing his daughter again, and choosing her out loud.